Welcome to our podcast discussion. Today we're diving into some radical reinterpretations of what Jesus really preached.
Yeah, I'm quite intrigued. What I mean is, there's a lot to unpack about celibacy and family values, right?
Exactly. So, first off, it's pretty clear from the text, Jesus was almost certainly celibate. No mention of a wife, unless you count that, infamous foot massage moment, which is hardly a romance subplot.
True. And what's interesting is that he not only practiced celibacy, but actually taught it. You know his words in Matthew 19:12, talking about eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven? That was radical.
Right, it's like, not your typical encouragement you'd see on a fridge magnet. Some early Christians really took that to heart. So much so that some, literally took extreme measures, like even castration in some cases. Can you imagine?
Absolutely wild. And then there's Luke 14:26, where he says if you don't hate your family, your father, your mother, wife, children, well, you're not worthy of him. That sounds quite harsh by any modern standard.
Yeah, it's almost scandalous. It's not so much about the emotional act of hating, but rather it's like a total commitment demand. You drop every worldly tie, even the ones that society holds so dear.
Right. I mean, even today, isn't it a bit controversial to literally say, put me above your parents or kids?
Truly radical. Absolutely. And the context matters. Jesus was preaching an apocalyptic message. The kingdom of God was imminent, so there was no room for settling down, for getting, involved in the everyday family business. Like, say, getting a Costco membership.
Yeah, it's like his audience was meant to, drop everything immediately. I remember that moment in Matthew 8:21-22 when a man asked to first bury his father, and Jesus said, "Follow me and let the dead bury their dead." Precisely.
Exactly. It wasn't about being callous. It was, about not letting family obligations slow you down when the, end is so near.
And then there's Matthew 10:34-37, where Jesus talks about coming not to bring peace, but a sword. He essentially says that anyone loving their family more than him isn't worthy. That's not exactly a, warm and fuzzy message.
Right, it's more like a spiritual Molotov cocktail. It really challenges our modern view, where family is seen as the highest value. It's a complete inversion of what many expect.
Exactly. Now, I do have a respectful challenge here. While some scholars argue that Jesus was redefining what family means, making it more about spiritual bonds rather than blood relations, I wonder, doesn't that still validate the value of traditional family? I mean, it's just shifting focus, not devaluing it, right?
That's a good point, but think about it. When Jesus, in Mark 3, essentially sidelined his own family by saying those who do God's will become his true family, it really underscores a call to, an almost total break from natural ties. It's not a subtle redefinition. It's a, outright challenge to the status quo.
Right.
It's like he's saying, your biological connections might block you from the highest calling.
I see what you mean. You could say his message was anti-family in the conventional sense.
Exactly. And then there's the Pauline perspective. Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 kind of takes it up a notch, arguing that it's better not to marry at all if you want to follow God's plan. Think about that. It's as if he was running for the Olympic no-sex marathon. That's a vivid way of putting it, right?
Absolutely vivid. It shows that both Jesus and Paul saw marriage and traditional family commitments as distractions from the imminent end.
Precisely. And that brings us to the irony of the modern picture. Today's American Christians, especially the evangelical right, often tout biblical family values. Marriage between a man and a woman, raising children, suburban stability.
Right, which is almost a complete contradiction to what the texts suggest. I mean, it's as if they've straightened out a message that was actually far more disruptive.
Exactly. It's like if Jesus showed up at a modern megachurch preaching his actual message, the one about abandoning even your family ties for discipleship, they'd probably call security. You'd have a complete culture shock.
That's so true. And it seems the sanitized message, the one we see on billboards and in family magazines, basically erases the radical, apocalyptic nature of early Christianity.
Right, it's like they photoshopped Jesus into this archetypal family man, a suburban dad in sandals, rather than the revolutionary prophet he was.
Yep. And let's not forget the groups like the Essenes and early monastics, who really took the calls for celibacy seriously. Those weren't fringe groups. They were significant parts of that original radical movement.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how the very words of Jesus, to drop every earthly tie, have been diluted over centuries. Modern culture has, repackaged them to fit a family-friendly agenda, even though it runs counter to the original intent. So much for the biblical family values we hear today.
Right. It's like we're being fed an image that aligns more with the American dream than with first-century apocalyptic realities.
Exactly, and it's fascinating. The original call wasn't to build lasting familial bonds, but to be so utterly committed that even your closest relationships pale in comparison to following God. And think about the practical implications back then. Family ties meant inheritance, survival, honor. To abandon that is no small ask. It's like he was literally asking people to choose between life as they knew it and a radically different path.
I can see that. It's a bit like demanding someone to drop everything, even their identity, for the sake of a fleeting promise that the world is about to end.
Exactly. And that sense of urgency is so palpable. Jesus wasn't inviting a relaxed lifestyle. He was inciting a complete upheaval of individual priorities.
Yep.
No wonder it's still so provocative.
It really is. And speaking of provoking, how did the early Christians handle such teachings? I mean, wasn't it practically unthinkable to abandon your family in a society where, survival often depended on it?
Well, that's where the radical nature comes in. Many early followers did just that. They embraced celibacy, joined monastic communities, and literally walked away from traditional attachments to fully heed the call. It takes real conviction.
And it definitely wasn't a popular everyday choice for most people. It required a complete realignment of one's values.
Precisely. And modern Christianity has largely softened or sanitized this message to appeal to broader societal norms.
And that's where the critical irony lies. The original, unfiltered message of discipleship was far more about sacrifice and detachment than about family unity as we see it today.
Exactly. So wrapping it all up, Jesus was celibate. He promoted celibacy, and controversially, he challenged the primacy of conventional family ties. It's a message that's far removed from today's picture of Jesus as the ultimate family
indeed.
guy.
And honestly, it makes you wonder how different Christianity might be if we had held onto that original radical vision instead of, repackaging it for a modern audience, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's as if we've swapped out the revolutionary call to total commitment for a model that's much more, palatable and less disruptive to the status quo.
It's a paradigm shift that really forces us to reconsider what we believe about family, tradition, and the cost of following a radical vision.
Yeah. And that's what makes this discussion so compelling. The tension between radical religious traditions and modern interpretations of faith, it's endlessly fascinating and a bit uncomfortable to confront.
Right on. Well, it's been quite a ride unpacking these ideas. Thanks for the deep dive. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Anytime. And for anyone ready to challenge everything they knew about biblical family values, This is only the beginning of a much broader conversation.
Absolutely. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and thanks for listening.